because we have, we've been through a lot, to be honest, over the years. And I think for us, like I don't think I ever really thought about things in the past as being these strict kind of crossroads in time, but in kind of preparing for talking to you today, I actually have kind of learned a little bit about our journey, and I think about the journey ahead as well. So it's been great, and so thank you for having us today, and thank you all for being here. It's lovely to see. It's lovely to see the projector out. We've not had it out since Christmas karaoke, to be honest. So it's great. Any excuse to get the fairy lights on as well. So what I'll do first of all is talk a little bit about where we came from, because I thought there's some people in the room that might know who we are and where we've been, and then there's going to be some of you that have never even heard of us before. So for every year, I'm going to tell you about what our biggest, or at least most kind of important kind of crossroads or changes or pivots that we had to make. Some of them were by choice, some of them were not. But 2017, I mean, not necessarily a crossroads because that was when we started, but it was essentially a crossroads for me personally because I had never done anything like this before. I'd never ran a social enterprise. I had about 2 years experience of being a self-employed creative, but it was all totally new. And as you can see, in the early days, we were very social impact focused. So we were running workshops and events with an aim to bring people with marginalised genders together to have space to just hang out and do crafts. And I mean like low-skill crafts, so zine making, collage making, a little bit of handed. We had a Play-Doh workshop, cookie making. But it was great fun, and we had great turnout. We had loads of people come to our events. We had loads of people say that it was such a positive impact on them. So that was a real driver for starting Wells in Kind. We like I said, I didn't even know what a community interest company was. Because my dad told me, he was like, oh yeah, that's what you should do. So he did the forms for me, dyslexic, ADHD, so that was helpful. But yeah, first year, very low key, didn't make a lot of money, but had a lot of fun. Then 2018, we realised if we wanted to make this sustainable, we would really need to think about how we were going to generate some sort of income. And for me, I wanted to keep all of our services free, so I didn't want that to be a way for us to kind of bring money in. And my background was in embroidery, so I had 2 industrial embroidery machines at the time, but we decided to invest in a direct-to-garment printer, which is basically for kind of like t-shirts, sweatshirts, and things like that. Now, if any of you don't know what a direct-to-garment printer is, because quite often people don't, it is one of the most ethical ways that you can print onto fabric, 0 water waste, basically like, an office printer times 1,000, you put the t-shirt on, prints it, comes out, very little waste. And this was a really exciting new direction for us because previously we had been just kind of experimenting. And as you can see, these are 3 of our friends from back in the day doing a little bit of modelling for us as we were doing those very low budget photo shoots to start building up our content. And again this year, very low key, we were building our business. We didn't necessarily make a huge amount of income, but we were having fun. That's kind of the point, isn't it? Then by 2019, our focus shifted a little bit more. We were happy doing printing. We enjoyed doing printing. We were creatives. It was fun, we were able to, put out really high quality products, but there was something in it that I felt like both myself and Rachel, who at the time, she's still on the board of directors, but we were kind of both together there on the day-to-day, just kind of got a bit boring, to be honest, and it was, it was fine, but we didn't really set this up to just be, doing printing every day. We wanted to focus back on helping people. So we had studio, I think it was only about 300 square foot, which is maybe half the size of this room. So we decided, let's make a plan to take on a bigger space, somewhere that we can run our workshops, because obviously at the time we were doing them in local cafes and other co-working spaces. So we thought, let's see if we can kind of go big and open up our own creative community space. 2020. It happened. We managed it. So the space that you're in today, we took on a 6-year lease in January 2020. We maxed out our credit cards. We absolutely rinsed our bank accounts because it was a safe bet. We had people lined up to use our services. We had all of our print equipment. By this time we had a risograph printer, 2 industrial embroidery machines and a direct-to-garment printer. We had set them up so that people could come, book in, rent them out. We would train and upskill people and give creatives a space to actually do the work themselves, and we all know how important that is, to be able to cut costs, but actually to be able to have a little bit more kind of control over the processes that we're doing. We were open for 5 weeks before the pandemic came along, and we all remember what that time was like, don't we? It was, it was a shit show. Like there was no, and I still remember actually me and Rachel sitting at the table. We had the new Nicola Sturgeon like on the laptop, the live. Yeah, it was absolutely.
Tuesday afternoon.
It was absolutely wild, and we were like, God, what are we going to do? Because obviously the reason our organisation existed was to have physical spaces where we would bring people together physically and do things together. So we had to focus back on just doing print and embroidery services, and obviously back then as well, I'm sure you'll remember, nobody knew how. I think they first said it will be 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. 3 weeks of being in your house, and look, we're still seeing the effects of it today. So we thought, okay, we've now got a 6-year lease on a building that we'd fallen in love with. We probably could have been able to, back out. But we decided we wanted to give it a shot, and we saw the kind of long-term potential of everything that we were doing here. So I think the first spot was, everybody was on furlough and spent that time putting out funding applications, and we redid the website so that people could order online. And by some miracle, it worked, and we grew 600% that year. So we went from trading income of 25,000 a year before to 180. And now there was a few factors involved. I think probably a lot of people all of a sudden being furloughed and being like, oh wow, this is actually my opportunity to start that small, t-shirt business that I wanted to do, to be able to focus a little bit more on the merch for my band and things like that. And it snowballed. I don't know if anybody in the room has ever experienced rapid growth like that. I would not wish it on my worst enemy. It's really difficult. It's really difficult having something that snowballs when you actually don't really have that much experience in running a bigger business. Nevertheless, we gave it a shot. We really, really pushed through, and in 2021, we decided to push our focus into embroidery as our main income. Now, I mentioned earlier on we did have a couple of embroidery machines, but before 2021 we weren't actually really pushing it as a service. It's a very slow process, and to be able to compete with larger companies, you really have to have machinery like this. So this was a £30,000 embroidery machine. And it was great because all of a sudden we had this huge capacity, and in fact the room that we're in just now was our embroidery room. And we had Kerry join us, who actually had been hassling me for years about giving her a job, and I never really had anything for her. But I kind of built this team of people that had all basically been made redundant because of the pandemic, and we just kind of came together and we were like, let's see what we can do. And we built up some amazing clients. We have, I think the biggest embroidery order that we had kind of over that time period was a £35,000 order, which again for us just, we didn't really know, we were winging it. But it quickly became the main focus for us, not just because of the capacity, because we could obviously do a lot of work by now, but it was something that we realised that we were putting a little bit more thought and attention to than other embroidery companies, and we were getting really, really, really good feedback on the work that we were doing. So then, 2022, we decided we were going to scale the business through contract work for embroidery. Something we had, of course, absolutely no experience in by this point, but we decided to apply for social investment to help us hire a salesperson who had the experience in that to come and kind of do it for us. And again, we were successful. We got £85,000 from First Port's Catalyst Fund. I think we were one of the first awardees of it because it was new at the time. and we were able to hire a key account manager from one of Scotland's largest clothing brands. And we also decided we needed more help on the board of directors and had one of the executive directors of Dickies Workwear join us. Dream team, had the capacity, had the team that we needed. I mean, you probably couldn't have had a better setup. Didn't work. Just didn't work. And it's so funny because, you know, in hindsight you can always look back on things and say, oh, maybe if we'd done this differently, maybe if we'd done this differently. But a few things happened. The salesperson that we hired, you know, from the biggest, you know, big, if I said the name right now, everybody would know who they were, right? And she couldn't sell. In 5 months, and I'd had advice from business advisors. It was like, look, really good salesperson, it's going to take them about 3 months before they start seeing it, so you have to be prepared for that. So I gave it 3 months, and then I thought, oh God, and I gave it another 2. And by that point, we'd lost too much money. But at the same time, the cost of living crisis had come in as well, mid-2022, and by the end of 2022, it had had a major impact. Not just because we lost a lot of customers due to them closing, but also a lot of our kind of like potential clients, or at least this goal of, you know, really pushing to get bigger orders and contract work. All of a sudden, nobody really cared about the expensive, ethical, sustainable work. And, you know, the workwear merch, they needed the cheap stuff in the meantime, or they just put any activities like that on hold. And for us, small company, very little reserves, it floored us. So as you can see, Helen came in and helped turn this space back into what it is. Sold off all of our equipment. Was one slight spanner in the works as well, in that I had a newborn baby. But by some stroke of luck, she was she was an angel. She would sleep under the table. I had this big lovely scarf, which I've lost now and I'm absolutely gutted. And I would just basically put some like paperweights on it so that would block out the light, a white noise machine. And I mean, until she was about 6 months old, it kind of works. I don't know if my brain has just maybe blocked out how traumatic it was, but we all know brains can be a bit weird for that. But yeah, we decided the only way for us to actually, again, be able to move forward was to set the space back up as we had originally intended to. But I think through that I kind of realised, you know, I never really set out to run a print and embroidery company. But when we had that, you know, we had 2 years, I think in our 4th year, our total income was $250,000. And it's like, that sounds amazing and wild, but we didn't really make a profit. The salary cost was half of that. And I think getting back to that DIY, and as you can see, the space is very DIY, and I think that's why people really, really love it. That DIY ethos of bringing people together is really, you know, we realised that that was at the core of what it was that we wanted to do. So, 2024, you know, 2023 set up all our studio spaces, and by 2024 we had launched our co-working space, which is the room that you're all in today. And thank you to Helen for making it look so glorious for today's event. And